everyone, and welcome to the part 2 of the webinar where we'll be talking about psychological, cognitive, and physical inclusion. With us today, we have Ms. Mugdha Desai. She's a professional counselor. She has completed her master's in psychology with a specialization in clinical. She has also worked as a former professor of psychology and now is currently a practicing counselor. She's also a trained personnel in transactional analysis and somatic integrative therapies. And she will be covering the psychological inclusion aspect of our webinar. And then we have Toastmaster Vidya, who will be covering the physical inclusion aspect of this webinar. Toastmaster Vidya has a relative whose kid is a specially able person, and thus she has observed and has some really insightful points about the same to share with us. So we have Toastmaster Vidya for the physical inclusion part. And from my experience, I'll be sharing some of my tidbits on the same. And we also have Toastmaster Chakradhar, our next synergy editor and our mediator in this webinar. So let me welcome you all in the webinar and let's jump into it. Mugdha, I would like to ask you, what was your journey with inclusion? Could you please explain about the same?
Yes. To begin with, I would like to appreciate or address the word inclusion. When we talk about inclusion, we are assuming that there is a group which is a so-called normal group, and then there is a subgroup who is deviating from these norms, and then we get to decide whether to include them into mainstream or not. But who is to define what is normal and not so normal? So I think my journey with inclusion started as with my childhood experience, where I was a really socially awkward child and with not so good grades, and the kind of social interactions that I experienced. I had a very supportive family, but when it came to social and school experiences, they were not so great. Also, as a child, I got exposure to many mental health disorders like schizophrenia or learning disabilities, anxiety, depression. And while I was observing them, I got to see the kind of distress this not just the individual experiences, but also the family members go through. And unfortunately, this distress was not just because of the disorder per se, but it was also about the stigma and the fear associated with it. The efforts that these families had to go through to hide it from others, and the efforts that they had to put in to get the basic mental health facilities available. So that was very distressing to observe, and that made me more inclined towards joining this field. So as a teacher, when I started my career as a teacher in the field of psychology, I realized that mental health concerns are very predominant in college age students. But apart from that, there are also some small inhibitions that these people experience. It could be stage fear, it could be anxiety, it could be lack of spoken English skills, which makes them less confident about themselves. And when a person pursues some deficit within themselves, unfortunately, they paint their entire personality based on that one deficit, overlooking all other good aspects that they have. So we decided to have specific support groups targeting these concerns. A support group for stage fear, a support group for anxiety, so that we could hone these necessary skills at a very young age. The aim is not to glorify the one deficit in them, but the aim was to help them look at themselves in a holistic way. Look at the bigger picture of their personality. So even after I have left my job at teaching, I think I have made it a mental mission for myself that whoever I interact with, may it be a personal contact or may it be a professional contact, I try to look at that person holistically, and I also help that person look at themselves holistically. Because when we are talking about inclusion, that inclusion has to start from myself first. Only when I can accept myself the way I am with all aspects of my personality can I truly be myself, and then I can expect that others also do the same. So I think for me, the journey of inclusion was looking at people holistically and helping them identify themselves as a true self. That's about it.
That was very amazing, Mugdha. Toastmaster Vidya, would you like to share your journey with inclusion?
Yeah. I was an engineer just going on with my regular, day-to-day life. when suddenly one of the children in my family had a stroke, and she was diagnosed with something called as dystonia. So that is where my journey with inclusion began. To give an idea of what dystonia is something where the child doesn't have control over the muscles, the muscle tone. If I want to open my hand, I can just do it very easily. But for that child, the area of the brain is disrupted. So when I saw the child at the age of 9 deal with multiple injections and then therapy, day-to-day therapy, she was missing school on a day-to-day basis. That is when I realized that the kind of challenges that we have in the society, and we just take it for granted. We just go on with our regular life. So the questions that they have in the mind, why is this happening to me? Or from my side, what I did for the inclusion bit is that to be as a support for the family, to be with them, to talk to the child on a day-to-day basis, because that communication bit probably within the family, we go to the society later, but within the family, you need to have that support system. You need to understand the child. You need to have an open communication with the child so that the child is able to deal with this particular thing, not feeling different, not feeling that they are being included in the society, but they are part of the society. So this is my message, that the family support system is very, very critical for the inclusion to begin from home.
Indeed, and very aptly said, Toastmaster Vidya. I think my first experience with inclusion was when I was in school, and I had a few classmates who were intellectually slightly, what we can say, slow. So even and even though they were able to somehow cope up, we know that their own set of challenges is different, and as you both rightly mentioned, their families face a different deal of issue when facing the family. But what I felt really bad was that when these people who were struggling with their own challenges, and when my classmates were additionally bullying them, some of them, and that was a very disheartening thing, I must say. I mean, they are human, they have equal right to live as you if they are on this planet. And if not anything, you have to respect them out of a basic humanity, a respect a human has for another human. And that is somewhere I thought that, if I can't stop them from being bullied, at least I can do my share by, helping them out if they need anything else. And I think one of the worst feelings in the world is being excluded, and that is why we talk about inclusion. So, even if you are in like social rejection, what we call psychologically, it's a phenomena that impacts all human almost equally. So even if you're a normal person and you're in a group, and the group decides to exclude you, you can imagine the feeling you get. So think about these people who go through this every day, and out of because of something for which they aren't even responsible. So, for some people, like what we call normal, they might have some personality traits, but this ID thing that they are having, how are they responsible for it? And like they have to cope up with it, and on that the social rejection. So if I can't make them include in it. I thought at least I can try to somewhat bridge this gap. So I used to sit with these children during my lunch break, or I used to share if they needed any help with homework or anything. So I used to help them, and after a few years later, I met a sister of one of these girls who was in my school and who was slightly slow. And her sister kind of thanked me that, for you, because you were so kind to her that you actually made her school life somewhat bearable. That, her whole day she was being bullied and targeted. And, when she was in other classes, she had to sit alone and eat her tiffin while the other kids were so busy enjoying their recess. And at that time when you sat with her and had just had your tiffin with her, I think it made her day more bearable and more happier. So I think it was something small, like avoiding them from the social rejection, or just sitting with them. Even something small can make their life so bearable. So I don't think you have to do something very huge or big to make it inclusion. Inclusion is such a simple term that you just have to accept someone non-judgmentally and treat them with the basic human respect that we treat one human, that one human should treat the other human with.
Just to add on to that, there's a small thing that I remembered from my childhood days. My best friend had dyslexia. And at
Okay.
that point in time, we didn't even know because teachers used to categorize those children as children who don't read. They
Right.
don't put in a, because they could not understand the fact that the child is having difficulty in understanding in the class. So I became friends with her in 10th standard, and she used to always sit beside me and copy from my notebook. Because she was told she cannot do it. So one day, what happened when she was copying it from my book? I closed my book and I told her that you try. Even if you write 3 lines, you try. I don't remember this incident, but she tells me today that that one line where I believed in her. Today she's in Australia and she's doing well as a project manager. But she could stand up on her foot. She completed her graduation. So even today, when she tells me, it is something that probably small acts of ours can go a long way in helping each other.
So, Mugdha, madam, or should I call you Mugdha? Is it okay?
Mugdha, please, Mugdha, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, can you please share your thoughts about what are some of the challenges faced by these people, which we are unaware of? Means, as a society, we don't know. So, these are their challenges. Yeah.
I think to begin with, first of all, I was really touched by what Madhura shared and her experiences. I think if only all of us could show that much amount of sensitivity, many of these challenges that I would like to speak about would be reduced to half. So the upfront, the most debilitating challenge is lack of awareness in people. Lack of awareness, unfortunately, also on the part of people who are experiencing psychological disorders, as well as lack of awareness on the part of society. Now, people don't realize how debilitating these mental health conditions could be. Okay,
Right.
I'll just give you a snippet of it. Let's just assume you wake up one day and you just feel really heavy and you don't feel motivated to even get out of your bed. All the time, your heart is pounding and it's racing, and you just don't feel like moving towards your job. You push yourself to your job, and again, you're overthinking. There are a lot of doubts in your mind, thoughts that are questioning your credibility, questioning your self-worth. And because of that overthinking, you cannot concentrate, you make a lot of mistakes, which again makes you question yourself. Now, whatever I just described is a normal day-to-day experience of who is going through. If this is a one-day thing, imagine what this person would be feeling if he's going through that or months after together. And then when we hear comments like, just snapped or labeled, most people label them as crazy, or they get labeled as attention seeking. So even if someone is talking about something as severe as suicide, people would just say, oh, it's a natak, they just need attention, they're seeking attention, or they'll be called weak or sensitive. Traumas cannot be compared. I cannot say that because I went through something greater, what you are going through is a very small thing, and how can you be affected by it? So you are weak for going through what you are going. So I think we need to avoid labeling people based on their psychological disorders. And the third challenge that these people experience is not receiving timely help. Because unfortunately, a fractured bone is visible to a naked eye, but a shattered mind is not. So people don't really understand what is happening to them, and a lot of time is just passes by, and they receive help at a very later stage. So I think if we could just spread more awareness about mental health concerns and what are the available facilities and resources, I think their suffering can be reduced to a greater extent.
Thank you for your thought. And definitely these challenges they face day in, day out. Yeah. I agree with that. So, Toastmaster Vidya, what do you think? What are some of the challenges faced by these people, which actually as a society we don't know? We are still unaware. Yeah.
I think the first thing from my point of view, where as well as I have seen, is they don't want pity. They hate it when people stare at them. When they're walking on the road, they have to wear something called, they may have some support systems like something called as a splint that is used to support their leg. Or probably in the hand, they're wearing something that is used to help their hand to function normally. The first thing they hate is when they're walking on the road, people just keep staring at them. And they feel different. You don't need to tell somebody that you're different. Just your eyes, probably you're doing it out of pity or you're doing out of kya hua. But then you are making them feel different. So this is one thing that the child that I know despises. She hates me. She says, make me feel normal. You don't need to come and ask me something wrong. For example, she's going in the airport, and when she's on the bus, somebody comes and asks, have you had a fracture? Is there a problem with your leg? Because people don't understand that kids also may have this kind of really crippling issues where they're not able to deal with it. As it is internally, they're having a lot of battles on a day-to-day basis. Why is it that other children are going to school and enjoying a playtime, whereas I'm going to the hospital and doing my physiotherapy? Why is my play limited to exercises? I can't go and do things like other kids. Over and above that, when we consciously or unconsciously make them feel different, that is the one thing. They want acceptance the way they are, not being defined by the problem that they have, but being accepted for the person that they are.
Yeah.
This is one
Great.
small thing, because mentally it really makes them feel very bad. When they go to sleep, probably as they reflect back during the day, they see that, okay, so many times, people have categorized me as different. For example, this child who I know, when she was in her 8th standard, that is a age when children get conscious about the way they look. So one of the classmates came and asked her, don't you feel ugly wearing that? So that means there is a lack of sensitivity at the home. At home, the parents are not teaching them that if somebody has a problem, don't go and define them just by the way they look. So probably if we educate the people around us, like Mugdha had said, that we need to create the awareness, but first amongst our own family.
Yes, it should start from the family itself, right? And the inclusion actual definition of the whole thing can be covered from starting from the family. Agreed. So coming to you, Toastmaster Mudra, what are your thoughts? Like Mugdha has shared that there are 3 challenges, and Toastmaster Vidya has shared that the family itself is not supporting them. So what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, I would like to reinstate on their thoughts as well. Because one thing is that awareness is a big challenge. So if you tackle that issue, even the people around you become slightly sensitive, knowing that why this is happening, and why they shouldn't be behaving the way they are behaving. Another point I would like to address is the infrastructure. When it comes to people who are visually impaired or even physically specially abled, many times the infrastructure around us doesn't really support them. Like not all buildings have ramps or other facility, or they don't, not all the buildings even have a washroom for specially abled people, because they can't really easily accommodate in the washroom the way we can. So so even sometimes there is a lack of a handle which they can have a support of for using something as trivial as a washroom. And many times while traveling they face this issue largely. Another point is even sometimes in educational institutions and all, also they face this kind of thing due to the lack of infrastructure. And apart from that, one thing I would like to address is the labeling. Many a times, and this is a very derogatory act, that you refer to somebody based on that particular thing, which makes them exclude.
Yeah.
So yeah, so when you're addressing that classmate, you address them as the one that is visually impaired, or the one who has an issue with his or her limbs, or the one who walks in a crippled way. Like, will you address any other classmate like that? You might, for other classmates, you might actually, the first bencher or the back bencher, the one who's very mischievous or the one who's very smart. We address them by, their personality traits or some other qualities. But when it comes to these people, many times we just reduce them to these labels or like these challenges that they face. So that is something I like. You can imagine what kind of psychological impact they might be having when they're addressed by something like this. And
Right.
and you literally limit them to that one thing. What if they have something more than that? Like I have a classmate, and I think he was autistic, but he was a genius at maths. Like you just tell him a date, like you just tell him the date you completed your degree or the year you completed your degree, and within the next second, literally the next second, he will tell you that so you completed your degree 33 years ago. So that is how
Okay.
fast his brain worked. Imagine. And
Yeah.
I think he would have been a prodigy, or like, or a genius at maths if
Yeah.
somebody would have addressed his positives. But they reduced him to his
Right.
autism. And so the teachers also,
Mhm.
sometimes thought that he's doing this behavior out of mischief. They completely neglected his positive and just limited him to his autism or his behavior issue. And his parents also, I think, were kind of categorizing him as different, unable to see his positive. So even they had this mindset that this person will struggle throughout their life. And I really feel if only somebody would have noticed that positive side and worked on that instead, imagine where that guy could have been today. And unfortunately, I think he had to drop
Obviously,
out of the
obviously,
college
yes.
because of this.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think that labeling
Yes.
thing and infrastructure as well as awareness are some of the challenges that we are kind of unaware of, and we can look into it. Mugdha, what were your learnings from this journey of inclusion?
I think to put it in just one simple line, my biggest learning is that we are all work in progress. You know, it's a journey for all of us that we are going through. I personally always encourage people to change their vocabulary and drop using the words like good or bad and positive and negative, that I am a bad person or I have these bad traits. Instead, we can classify our traits or our world into helpful versus not helpful. And instead of saying that this thing in me is bad, if I could use it is not helpful, then I know that it can be changed. Then I know there are certain things which are helpful, which I can grow more, and then there are certain not helpful things which I can modify and work on. Only if we can have a holistic view of people like this and ourselves, then I think we could work towards this journey of better inclusion of people. When we interact with people, we should be knowing that we are just looking at one chapter in that entire book, and there is so much that has happened before, and there is so much that is about to unfold. And every single of us, we have that potential to grow and evolve up to maximizing our potential. We have that inherently within us. So I think only if we can believe truly that all of us are work in progress, then we can truly start the process of inclusion and not just look at one aspect and label.
Toastmaster Vidya, would you like to share your learnings?
Yeah, when I used to go for physiotherapy with this kid, that place used to be filled with kids who had multiple challenges. In fact, there was one girl who was like, around 5'8" and extremely beautiful to look at, but she was paralyzed hip down. She had to be lifted, and she used to come there, do her therapy, go back, but a smile on the face. The kind of positivity that these children have despite the challenges, it shows that we all actually have that strength within ourselves. If needed, we will rise up to the occasion. So that is something we need to search, and that is a big learning for me when I look at them. That despite this one guy called Nick Vujicic, who doesn't have hands or legs, and he does everything in the world. So it means that if we put our mind, if we put our strength into it, we can rise up to the situation. This is a big learning when I see them, that probably when we were small, we have heard something that I was complaining that my shoes were not good until I saw a man who didn't have legs. So that is something for me as a takeaway, is that be happy with what you have and try to make the best use of it. Whenever I interact with these kids, that is all I learn.
That was absolutely great, Toastmaster Vidya and Mugdha. I think my learning from this were I learned acceptance. I learned to look at people non-judgmentally and holistically. I think I learned to look at people beyond the labels, or the things they are usually referred to, or limited down to. and it also helped me look at the positives in a way, because now when I look at any person, I mostly try to see what are the positives in them without just limiting them to this otherwise what people consider as their weakness. I think they also have this strength, and as for positive psychology, having this unconditional positive regard, I think something that is, if we apply it here, and I think successfully, we will be able to include these people in the mainstream if we, look at the positive and try to harness that positive instead of, just looking at the weakness and limiting them to that.
Thank you, Toastmaster Madhura, for your thought. Mugdha, if you have to ask, if you want to share one message for all the people in the society, what could be that message from your side? Yeah.
I think that one message would be to be very sensitive when you know that you are dealing with someone having psychological disorder. Be very careful about how you're communicating with them. Don't ask them awkward questions. Don't show them pity or sympathy. And be patient and be supportive to them, just the way you would support anyone with any physical disorder. Like, you wouldn't ask someone having a coronary heart condition to just run 10 kilometers because you say you look alive, your heart seems to be working if you are alive. You wouldn't
Right.
belittle their problems. So I think be more supportive and empathetic towards people having psychological disorders.
Agreed, very true. Yes, thank you for that. So, Toastmaster Vidya, we would like to know your one message also for the society. Yeah.
My
Please.
point of view, it is being extremely mindful of each and every action of yours. Simple things like statement, "Hey, are you mad?" We just use it so loosely, but we don't realize probably in their house there's someone who's suffering from that issue. Or "दिखता नहीं है क्या?" These are all terms that probably as a kid we start using it and we don't realize and we are not sensitive. So whatever you talk, all your actions, and most importantly, please try and not stare at the kids, because I personally have experienced that this is the thing that hits them most, because when you watch them for being different, they know and they are being made to realize that every moment they are different. Over to you.
Thank you.
Yes, true that,
Agree to this.
Toastmaster. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, true that, Toastmaster Vidya,
yeah,
because
Toastmaster
in
Mudra.
case even if we are on the road and if someone starts staring us, even in a non-pervert way, we would still feel awkward or weird that why is this person staring at us? And the first thought that usually comes is like, is there something funny about me, or is there something wrong that that they are staring at us like that way? So imagine if we also get this kind of thought. So when a person like them has to go through that on a daily basis, we can imagine what things they face in the mind. So I think what you stated was completely correct, that we have to be mindful about that. And as you said, Mugdha, like it was absolutely true that when it comes to physical challenges, we take they receive more respect than the mental health disorders. That is something like I think people are more comfortable telling that, and sometimes I think, nowadays, some people actually feel proud of telling it. If you would have observed it, I have diabetes, I have sugar, like, it's kind of a reflection that, maybe they have a busy lifestyle, or, but, people
Or
are
I
very,
work so hard.
yeah, or I work so hard, and it's like, sometimes they pride in it, but they are more comfortable revealing these things. But when it comes to mental illnesses, so even if you're suffering from a mild depression or even anxiety, people people will actually try to hide it, and because and even if that person is comfortable with it, still, because of the stigma that our society still carries, it is difficult to even if the person has come to acceptance, it is yet the society is yet to come to acceptance with that part of physical mental health.